So, hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across our industry, covering a wide variety of topics, from skills and careers through to technical overviews, and we talk about the softer skills. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, a like, and a subscribe would be awesome. Okay, so my next guest on In Conversation this week is a cloud architect, an author, and instructor working at NordCloud at the moment, as well as the co-founder of the awesome Streaming Clouds podcast. So joining me from the Netherlands, I'm excited to welcome my next guest on In Convo with Mr. Robin Smorenburg. Hey Robin, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Hi, John. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming in and saying hello. It's been a little while in the community. You've been up to some awesome things in the community, so it's only apt that we record one of these episodes. So look, Robin, we've got some great topic areas to get through today. So before we do that, do you want to give yourself a little bit more of an introduction for those watching?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Right. So, obviously, my name is Robin Smorenburg. I'm an architect and a practice lead at NordCloud in the Netherlands. Right? We're a European country, but I'm based out of the Netherlands, like you already mentioned. I'm an instructor for LinkedIn Learning, like you already mentioned, and I founded Robino. More about that later, and co-founded Streaming Clouds together with Kevin Evans, that is. So, a little bit of a background story. I've spent like 15 years in the technology industry and made my way from the help desk to where I'm at today, and that's a cloud solution architect. I focused on personal development for the last few years. It has become one of my passions, and I'm trying to improve daily. So I always like to say I'm on a never-ending quest to become the best version of myself. There's no real destination there, and another one of my passions is helping others through co-active coaching and sharing my knowledge and perspectives. I'm always willing to help, contribute to the community, and meet new people. So, I'm always happy to connect. So, if you want, please reach out.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Robin. I think it's one of those things you kind of hit the nail on the head there with this never-ending journey. I mean, maybe let's start there with our kind of conversation around that kind of personal development aspect, because, of course, I guess it's right to say, we're in this zone at the moment in the industry where there's so many different technological advances going on. There's lots to choose from. I mean, what's your take on that at the moment, Robin, in terms of, your own journey to becoming a cloud architect? What did that look like? And, how do you see this personal development thing working at the moment in the industry?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Let's just start with where let's just start at the beginning, right? Like approximately 15 years ago, I started in IT, and I always kept developing myself. Always spent a lot of time on improving myself. Back then, it was purely technical. Of course, you grow as a person, but I wasn't really deliberately paying attention to that part yet, right? So it was all technical stuff. At one point, I was, becoming a systems engineer, a system administrator / system engineer. Then it went into consulting, and eventually started working as an architect more because of the experience I accumulated along the years, right? Because as an architect, I think you need, a certain level of experience and a certain level of understanding to wrap your head around like these bigger concepts, because you have to, you have to be able to oversee a solution, from beginning to end, actually. And I'm not saying all the bits and pieces. I usually work with a team, but yeah, there's a lot to that. And I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit less. I'm not really keeping track, but I started focusing on personal development as well, and communication skills. I figured out I have an ego, right? Everybody has an ego, but then suddenly you you can look at it. You're like, oh, wait a minute, these are ego-driven decisions or ego-driven reactions, right? So still dealing with that. I figured out I had imposter syndrome, so I needed to overcome that to be able to put myself out there. I like, okay, why, who am I, and what do I have to bring to the table in terms of value, right? But I think everybody has their perspectives to share, and everybody has
Mm.
something to share that will relate to someone, right? Because it's being told from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I had to overcome that. Found a group to be part of. It was Cloud Skills back then. Started engaging with Mike Fiver, and he helped me a lot on that personal development side of things. Right. Eventually moved towards deep work, so distraction less work, right? Focused work or deep work, where you get into a flow state and are able to produce a level of output or a level of value within a really small amount of time. So that's a skill I'm still honing. I do have ADHD, so it's easier for me to get in that hyper focus state.
Mm.
But the other side of the coin is that I'm really easily distracted as well. So with the right guardrails, phone on do not disturb, and other things that I use.
Mm.
It's at this point fairly easy for me to get in that flow state and be able to produce whatever I need to produce within a pretty small time frame. So yeah, what else, right? Because this and what I already said, this is like a never-ending journey. So this there's not really a destination, right? And I'm perfectly fine with that. And that's something I
Mm.
needed to learn as well, to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. And of course, it's nice if it leads to results, because eventually you need results, right? You need some positive results to keep going, to stay engaged, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's there a lot to unpack as well. But yeah, it's I'm still figuring it all out. Like burnout as well. If you look at our industry with everything
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
going on and all the things that people are learning and trying to stay, to keep up with all the developments that happen on a daily basis on the different cloud platforms. Things as Kubernetes, other pretty complex things that has a lot of bells and whistles or a lot to it. Um, you know, Next to that, there are a lot of people writing books, producing courses,
Mm.
writing blog posts. That's sometimes it feels like that's the bare minimum. Writing a blog post, but there are so many other ways to contribute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Engage, be on social media. All these things take energy, time, focus, right? Focus is not a infinite resource; it's finite,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's what I'm been up to lately, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it is. It's like I suppose we kind of deliberately start at that point of saying, right, okay, what is it in terms of careers, and kind of personal development, and it's not one thing. I think it's so easy for people to think, right, I work in a tech industry, I need to develop myself, I'm going to focus on technical skills, and I guess that's true. That is one element of it, but as you've just described there, this can blow up into covering so many different angles: your soft skills, your communication skills, how you interact, the things that you're interested with, and interested in doing, I guess, is part of it. So I mean, how did you start, Robin? Was it on the technical side of things? Was it you talk about the focus and getting to the flow. Now,
Mm.
my understanding of that absolutely is this whole concept of not getting distracted over focusing on a particular activity, and eventually, I mean, I read somewhere it was like if you've got 20 minutes of truly focused activity, not interrupted in any shape or form, after about 20 minutes, that's when you start to get into this zone of you truly focus on that task that you're working on that given time. What's it like for you? What would you start on? Would you focus on technical skills? Is it how do
Mm.
you unpack that? What's the best way? Have you got any kind of hints and tips around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, looking back at history or my trajectory, right?
Mm.
Then I would definitely advise my younger self to focus on deep work, making sure that you can really hone in, because some certain activities do need that level of focus to reach a certain level of quality or value, right? So and it makes it a lot easier to produce output, because if you're distracted all the time, right? And nowadays it's really easy because of social media and what that did to our attention span, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
really easily distracted. So I think that's a superpower if you hone that and use that in the right way, and then you can use that superpower to study, to accumulate knowledge, to work on fundamental skills or skills in general, right? And then you certainly become a lot more effective, because then you can laser focus your attention and your energy. And after that, you do need to relax, right? Because that's the other side of the coin. It's a finite resource. So on a really good day, when everything's on point, and I'm talking about diet, I'm talking about a self-care routine, maybe some journaling, some meditation, whatever, right? Then they say that that you can work for like 4 hours in that flow state or in that deep work
Okay.
state, and then that's it for that day. And then you should switch to, like, quote unquote shallow work, answering emails, taking care of some notifications, do whatever you still need to do, right? And then if you tie that back to 8 hours, and you're like, yeah, okay, but I still got 4 hours left, so what do you want me to do in these 4 hours? Well, time and output are not necessarily connected, but I think that if you produce enough output, that nobody cares how many hours you spend on them, right? So I would definitely start with deep work and honing that skill, and then use that skill for anything else, right?
No, no, that makes sense. And I guess what you're saying there is, that could, in theory, be related to if you are in the tech industry and you're looking to upskill or focus on a specific technical thing that you're looking to get better at. Use that mechanism. Don't get distracted. Focus on that. Find your learning materials. Really get into the zone and start picking that up first and foremost. And slowly, take one small element of that technical aspect, work on that until you get to the point that you're happy, and move through it. It's the whole thing is the ocean. You can't boil the ocean. Kind of aspect, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
guess, look, it's far too easy to get overwhelmed. I guess today, certainly, I know lots of people have been around the industry for a long time, but are certainly feeling that overwhelming feeling that they're, every which way you look at the moment, there is something new to learn. And I guess it's a case of, how do we get used to that as well? I mean, what's your routine there? Do you stay focused on a particular technical area and make sure that you've hit some goals before you move on to the next? What's your take on that?
I try to.
I think we all tried. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't always work like that, right? Sometimes I'm a big thing of what I do, I categorize that as a hobby. So my work and my hobby are, interconnected. They're synchronous, actually. Makes it difficult to sometimes take a step back and relax and unwind, right? So that's the other side of the coin. But it's really easy for me to find this motivation, this internal motivation, intrinsic motivation to do things. Nobody has to motivate me to do anything, right? I'll have the motivation already there, because I love what I do. Of course, sometimes I have days and I'm like, yeah, well, today I don't really feel like it, but okay, it's a working day, so I have to. But at least 9 out of 10, I really enjoy what I do, right? So that makes it really easy for me to engage, and really easy for me to sometimes be over enthusiastic for a specific subject, and then I go completely crazy on it, and then something happens, I lose my interest, and I move to something else. And of course, I always learn along the way, so it's not necessarily the certificate I'm aiming for. But usually I do, because it will give you like a structure, a framework, and a certain milestone where you can verify that you were learning the right things, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Plus, certifications look good in your resume as well. So I'm not going to say don't do certifications, but an example: I've been lining myself up for the CKA exam for, I think, a year and a half now. I already had the
That's the
voucher. Yeah,
Kubernetes admin
yeah, yeah.
exam. Yeah, yeah.
Certified Kubernetes administrator. So one day I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I heard a lot of Kubernetes going around in the community and
Yeah.
my customers and everything, and I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's definitely sounds like something I need to get into, right? So I bought this bundle on the Linux, the Linux Foundation, and you get this voucher for your exam. And that voucher has 2 years actually, I have to say, not a
Okay.
year and a half, 2 years, because this voucher is valid for 1 year.
Right.
I let that one expire because I was doing other stuff. I was doing Terraform. I suddenly decided to do some GCP on the side and other things, right? So there you go. My enthusiasm took me into, I was spread out too thin across certain subjects. So eventually I was like, yeah, okay, voucher expired. I moved to a new employer. I got them to buy a new voucher. So and that's the voucher I still have. But the voucher expires the 25th of this month. And now you can guess on which day I have my exam planned, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 25th. So yeah, I've been postponing it and pushing it out. Because it's a little bit of a scary exam, hands-on, practical, right? So you need to know what you're doing and know the commands and the whole concept and all the bits and pieces and everything, right? So it's a lot. On retrospect, I probably would have started with the KCNA, but back then it was not, this was not something that was available. To get your feet wet a little bit more before you just jump in the deep end, right? So, I got distracted along the way, and now I'm motivating myself to study, right? I studied for 2 hours yesterday. I still need to study for today to get myself ready for that exam. So yeah, I tend to look around in the community, right? What's there? What are people focusing on? Try to keep an eye on the trends, but also what do I like to do, right? Because it needs to be synchronous as well as much as possible, right? Sometimes I include something that's necessary, a necessary evil. But on the other hand, I try to focus on the things that I like to do. Right,
But I guess using that example, like you're saying there, Robin, in terms of you're putting yourself through this, you want to learn about Kubernetes, you're aiming towards the CK. I mean, let's just talk about the elephant in the room now. There's absolutely no shame in pushing things out. I think maybe this, in my experience, it's been that pressure, and that pressure can lead to that kind of that burnout feeling and that feeling of overwhelming, on you as a person. So, but let's just say there is no shame and there is no problem with pushing these things out. And I think it's that balance, isn't it? Is finding it's a blend of what you need to do for work, what you find interesting as an individual, what's going on in community in the industry, and you kind of need to find that whole balance in these things. And like you say, try and be aware when you're spreading yourself too thin, and you know that yourself. If you are literally, because I'm the master of spreading myself too thin. I'm literally jumping between so many different things, so I know full well what that feels like. But then it's a case of, as long as you recognise that, you can reel yourself back in and get to that focus time. And when right, actually I need to sit down, knuckle down now, focus on this particular subject. And I guess that's the picture that you're painting is there's no shame in any of this. This is how we are, I guess, all working in this industry today. Is that as we said at the start of this episode, there's so many ways that we can go. I mean, let's relate that to Azure now, Robin, in terms of those kind of fundamental skills. I mean, do you have a view on what should, like, new people or graduates into the industry, looking to start their first role in tech? Have you got kind of any hints and tips on what those fundamental skills might look like? Where should people start off? What's your view on that, Robin?
Absolutely, right. First of all, I want to highlight what you just said, right? There's no shame in failure, right? Or shame in pushing things back. And, I have to say the awareness that I have right now around spreading myself too thin, am I burning the candle at both ends, right? Am I asking too much of myself? Am I overdrawing on the energy balance, right? So that's an awareness I've developed in the last couple of years. Usually I would just hone in, would be there, grinding away until 12, 11 p.m. What is it, 12 p.m., 12 a.m., whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Midnight.
2,400 hours. right? And then I will go to bed, sleep 6 hours, wake up. And it was my younger self, right? The one full of energy and the one that felt like invincible, right? I never had a serious burnout, but sometimes I do crash and burn. And now I'm at a point that every Friday or every weekend, I try to, evaluate or look back on the last week. Like, okay, what worked? What needs work, right? And that's not just from a technical perspective or from an output perspective, but primarily, trying to look inside of myself and ask myself, like, okay, how are you doing? And so ideally my routine is like 4 times gym, make sure that I sleep 8 hours, right? No screens before I go to bed, well, etc., etc., right? But I never really was big on optimizing everything, and since I've done that, it's much easier to do all the things I'm doing. But still, I do burn myself, well, slightly burn myself out sometimes, or overdrawn on purpose. Like, okay, I know I'm stretching it, but I this is a deliberate effort,
Yeah.
right? And I know I do need to recharge later on. Well, that being said, balance remains a struggle. Right? It's not a picture perfect. Nowhere near. Right? I fall, I stumble, I get up. And the reason why I so openly speak about this is that I hopefully, inspire people to open up about it. And it's perfectly fine to be vulnerable to a certain degree and talk about your struggles and the things you're dealing with. Right? So yeah, that being said, I think failure is not learning from your mistakes. A mistake is not necessarily a failure, but learning from it, getting back up and redo, right? And then you get into that whole continuously improvement, and then we can get into DevOps as well if you want. But so okay. That being said, let's circle back to the fundamental technical skills, right? Because I do think that the fundamentals are more important than ever, right? Because under the hood, we're back. Yeah, we're basically still doing the same as 20 years or longer ago. Well, we still have compute, storage, databases, networking, security that we have to think about when we, architect a solution, engineer a solution, or do whatever we do. Especially with the cloud nowadays, right? You probably don't even notice that all these things are still there, but they are, right? So if you look at the fundamental skills, I think compute, like I already mentioned, understanding the basics of CPU and RAM memory, what is their relationship to one another, and that ties a little bit back to how do computers work. I'm not saying full-blown computer science degree or full-blown understanding what all the transistors are and how it works, but more from a conceptual abstraction level, as like, okay, from a higher abstraction level, like, okay, what's going on, what's the relationship, and what do they do, right? Then storage, understanding the difference between file storage, block storage, object storage, and structured and unstructured data. So what is that, right? And maybe even go a step further and think about persistent and non-persistent. So what will happen with my data when a resource shuts down, restarts, fails, whatever, right? Is that data being persisted somewhere, or is it gone? Non-persistent data, right? Databases, understanding the difference between relational and non-relational databases. And I'm not saying writing SQL queries and being able to operate with DocumentDB APIs and all that stuff, but know that it's there and understand what the differences are, right? Networking, understanding the basics like IP addresses, subnets, switching, routing, firewalls, DNS, TCP and UDP, and HTTP. Well, it's a lot, but they're all synchronous and a lot of them tie back to each other, right? But yeah, networking is something that a lot of people try to stay clear from, because it can be complex, or it can be a little bit, daunting to wrap your head around. But eventually, we still would deal with networking on a day-to-day basis. If you connect to the Azure portal, you're using networking, right? If you're spinning up a serverless function or a Azure Container App or whatever, it uses networking to reach your resource. So networking is at the core of everything. And then security. I'm not saying security from a whole broad spectrum, but understanding authentication and authorization. What do these two do, and why are they needed? And then encryption and hashing. Now, there's probably a lot more that you need to be including, but I think if you focus on these, what is it, 5 pillars, and
Yeah.
try to focus on the concepts and the basics, then you should be well along, well on your way, so to say. What do you think, John?
No, I completely agree, and I think it's one of those things where, dependent on the level of, I guess, I mean, whether this the maturity of your career or your experience. If you are new into the world, and I always think of this with new people coming in where, they know nothing other than cloud compute almost. Maybe they've not, because, obviously we all reflect on our own experiences, and I'm of the vintage where I've been able to get my hands physically on bits of kit and wire cables and plug them into physical routers and switches. Now, all of that has been abstracted away with, using software-defined networking, for example. I think when you look at those fundamental skills, I like the way you framed it. So storage, compute, networking, absolutely. Odds on, if you're working in IT of any nature or working in the tech industry, you're going to kind of have some, experience with that, regardless of how long you've worked in the industry, because we've all got personal computers, we've all got Wi-Fi routers at home, we've got mobile devices. But I guess, understanding the broader kind of requirements of some of these things and how they interact with each other is absolutely fundamental, in my opinion. Even when you come into cloud computing now and you realize that a lot of these things are absolutely abstracted away, just realize that once upon a time there was there was a requirement to be completely focused in a very small, and there is to a certain extent still that requirement today, but what I find is there's a lot of overlap now. There's a lot of expectation that because you're in cloud computing, you automatically know networking, storage, compute, and where that might be true as a general, yes, an overview, a broad thing, I think the expectation on people today is that they know it a little bit deeper than maybe most. Now, whether that's just the industry sort itself out at the moment, we're all kind of, going through all of these changes together, and you can start to see, I think with Microsoft in particular, bringing out more specialist and niche kind of examinations, kind of focusing on networking as a specific kind of technical skill to have. I don't know, it's kind of, we seem to have gone to cloud computing, everything is kind of overlapped and meshed into one now, so I think that's what's causing the difficulty for people. How do we get started? Where do we get started? But I completely agree. To bring it right the way back, I completely agree with your take on those fundamental skills that break it back down to those compute, storage, networking, security from an authentication, authorization perspective. Maybe throw some network security in there as well. Understand, like you said, around firewalling and things like that and how that impacts stuff. And I guess once you start working on those particular areas, over time, your journey is going to take on legs of its own. You're then going to start recognizing the parts of the industry that you enjoy and you get most satisfaction out of working in. And I guess that's the part then that just realize the broadness of what is out there for everybody. Because there's so much, isn't there? You just look at the Azure platform. So, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, how do we keep up to date with these skills? That's another great question. I mean, what's your typical regime on that front? I mean, you've mentioned the CKA exam that you're going through at the moment. Do you always aim for an examination as to kind of, that's my target? Whether you, regardless what people think about examinations, do you use that as a kind of guide rail, or do you use some other mechanisms, Robin?
If there is a certification available for what I'm aiming to learn, absolutely, right?
Sure.
I do think that certifications are there to validate your knowledge, if done correctly, right? So I'm not saying get some fizzy exam question dump and get the certification, right? But truly understand what's going on, right? So and that's mixing, theoretical knowledge with the practical by actually doing stuff, So usually what I do, for example, I'm currently studying for the CKA, and next to that, I'm doing the AWS Solutions Architect Associate.
Okay. Yeah.
because I'm still missing that one, and I got the Azure and the GCP one. So I was like, oh, okay, let's add that. And I'm engaged in a AWS project at my work next to some Azure related projects as well. So I'm like, yeah, sure. And it's not that I'm doing the technical bits and pieces. I'm more as a cloud advisor, quote unquote, whatever, right? So I'm working with cloud architects who know AWS inside out, right? So, but I was like, okay,
Sure.
at first I was complaining, like, I don't want to do this. I won't be swearing, but normally I would do that. So, okay, I'm not going to do this. I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. And then at one point I was like, okay, why not, change this in something positive? Let's use this opportunity to, focus on the AWS architect, right? And then
Yeah.
look at, it's still market leader, right? At this point, I think.
I not to go off topic slightly here, but I thought that Azure had overtaken AWS back last year. In terms
From my
of
market share perspective worldwide,
yeah, I think there was something that the Microsoft are definitely hot on the heels, and I mean, let's face it, I guess
Microsoft is dominating. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Right. They really have an amazing ecosystem, and they really know what they're doing from a community perspective. And absolutely, I'm a Microsoft fanboy, right? I did some GCP work because I wanted to know how Google approaches things, and now I want to look into the AWS kitchen. Well, my heart is blue in that regard, right? Big blue. So, but okay. That being said, right, circle back to our topic. I do try to focus on certifications if they're available, but it's not a necessity, right? So, for example, 2 years ago, I was like, oh, everybody, DevOps, engineer, programming, was this whole thing of, okay, infrastructure engineers do need to be able to program to a certain degree, site reliability engineering, that whole thing. Like, whoa, okay, do we, as an infrastructure engineer consultant, because I have a huge, infrastructure background, do I need to be able to develop software? Well, I don't think I need to be able to fully, or develop full-blown software, but I wanted to understand software engineering or development for, enough to have a fruitful conversation with developers if we're building a solution together, right? Mutual respect, personal development, trust, etc. So if I respect and understand to a certain degree what they do, they will probably cross the bridge as well to my side and think about infrastructure and what they need and security and all that stuff. So it's like a two-way street, right? So I was like, okay, let's focus on some software development. Started doing Python, started doing Golang. I became okay with it, right? Nowhere near a professional software engineer, but I know enough to be dangerous, right? And then again, started focusing on the concepts, control flow, conditional logic, things like that, right? Error handling, libraries, how extensible is a language, and what are the use cases for a language, and how do I package it, using Docker or build packs or whatever, right? What do you have? Azure Draft, to name a few. Right, so, and there was not really a certification I was aiming for. I got a couple of courses, a book, certain other, bits and pieces I could use for my studying, and I just, chipped away at it, tried to do it, and it was really hard in the beginning. Like, oh no, what did I get myself into, right? First when I did that, my PowerShell skills improved greatly because I understood a lot more of what you could do with PowerShell, classes and all that stuff. So it improved my scripting, while scripting is a form of programming as well. Probably someone will hate me now for that comment, but I don't care. That being said, I decided not to pursue a certification there. Just, teach myself programming, try to get the information from a lot of resources, right? Because sometimes it's just like a puzzle. So you get a piece from there, you get a piece from there, you get a piece from here, and suddenly you get the last piece and everything clicks together, right? And usually you need different perspectives and different explanations around the same topic, and eventually it will click. Right, so if you read something, watch something, you don't understand it the first, immediately, give yourself some time, reread, research the topic, try to find other people who can explain it to you, and eventually everything will click together, right? Because that happened with me. I was really frustrated at certain points. I'm like, oh no, I'm never going to be able to wrap my head around this. And I just kept chipping away at it. The same with Kubernetes, and eventually, it's about repetition, persistence, showing up, not giving up, all etc. Right? It ties everything back together. But yeah,
It is.
that's what I do. Right? Probably a lot more information than you asked for, but
No, not at all. I think it's really important sometimes because, certain, like I say, I think we've probably all gone through it when we're looking to develop ourselves in whatever area that is, whether that's technically, whether it's soft skills, whatever. There is, I'll go back to that feeling of overwhelming, kind of an overwhelming nature of what you're trying to learn. And I guess my view on cloud compute and the skills and different technical aspects that you need to think of is literally like having a kit bag full of Lego bricks. You've got all of these different Lego bricks of different shapes and sizes, and you might be an expert in using, the large red 2x8 bricks. You'd be an expert in using various little bits of these, but then you'll come across this really bizarre, chamfered little brick, and you think, well, actually, how am I going to use that? What is that used for? And you might not have a clue. Because you're not able to you've not been given this instruction set to say we need some of these bricks. As an architect, I always find that I'm looking to learn these new skills to relate it to the problems that I've had in my working career. Now, look, it might be that those problems have been resolved by something that I'm just unaware of, but for me as an individual, how can I use some of these technological advancements or concepts or ways of working to introduce them into the way that I work? Now, if that happens to be introducing a technical thing into something that's what it was designed to do, then great, everybody's a winner. But sometimes it's about, especially when you talk about containerizing applications and things like that. Now, like you, I'm not a software developer. I'm an infrastructure person deep down. But what does that mean? Bringing those concepts and those ways of working into my world, if you like, and how can I better the bit that I do? And that's how I try and develop myself, is to try and think of ways of using these things in my understanding. Not because I think sometimes you can learn a technical element and think, okay, I've just learned this thing, but I'm not in that space working 9 to 5, so I'm probably not going to use it for that thing ever again, potentially, because that's not my bag. However, I've just learned that concept. How can I bring that concept into my way of working? And does it help me in any way? And I guess that's when I guess you get the confidence to think we don't just have to use these technical things for the specific reason that you're learning them for. You can modify and adapt them and bring them in. And I guess that's the way that I view the industry at the moment, is that everybody is kind of doing that. Vendors are doing that. Hyperscaler platforms are doing that. We've just got all this kit bag of stuff. Now, what do we do with it? Well, that's up to us as the individuals working in these roles to identify the problems we're trying to solve. And I guess trying to learn everything, we're back to that point, aren't we, of spreading yourself too thin, getting overwhelmed, focus time. Trying to do everything is just not possible, but it's trying to navigate your way around to solve the problems that are close to your heart. And that's the way I see things.
What a lot of people underestimate, right? People overestimate what they can do in a year, right? But they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Right? So let that one sink in. So if you're being deliberate about where you spend your focus, your attention, your energy on, and you have some form of game plan. So yeah, I have like a quote unquote North Star goal now between now and 5 years. It's really abstract. It's really, aiming for the stars. It's private. But I do have shorter, certain milestones that I'm aiming for, and I try to, show up every day or almost every day and at least do something towards that specific milestone, right? Or it's producing a script for a LinkedIn Learning course I'm working on, or it's writing a blog post or recording a video for Robino, right, my own platform, which I'll be transforming in a community somewhere soon. So I'm working on it behind the curtain, so to say. I'll be
Good.
releasing that soon. But I try to keep everything synchronous, and I'm trying to just chip away at it piece by piece. Right. Try not to be too hard on myself. Focus on it for 1 hour, for example. But if I would do that 5 hours a week, that accumulates into 5 hours, right? If I do that 52 weeks, well, minus some holiday, whatever, approximately, let's say 40 weeks, right? 40 times 5, well, etc. Do the math, right? So, and then suddenly that thing you're focusing on, becomes, it adds up, right? Before you know it, you'll be spending a lot of time and energy on a certain thing. You show up, you do it every day, right? And then it's repetition, right? When you were a toddler, or at least when I was a toddler, I had to learn how to ride a bike, right? And it took me a long time before I figured that out. And there was a skill that you kept on improving, right? At one point you were doing wheelies, right? At one point you were jumping around in like a skate park and stuff, but that took time as well, right? So what a lot of
And you
people,
probably fell off a few times.
yeah, broke
And
a
that's
couple of things as well.
yeah.
So what I'm trying to say here, and that's something I tend to forget myself, is if I venture in something new, like, oh, okay, I recently finished my first course. I expect the same level of engagement that I have in my day-to-day job when I venture in something else that's technology related, right? Oh, it's technology. I'm doing this 15 years, even longer. Because I was building website when I was 12 and stuff. Don't ask me why,
Yeah.
but so I tend to forget the amount of effort that I put into something to reach a certain level, right? So what I'm trying to say is give yourself the time to reach your goals. There's no such thing as overnight success, right? If you look at the most successful companies in this world, they usually have a huge history of failures, and at the beginning everything didn't went so smoothly, and it took a long time before they went the enterprises they are, or the conglomerates they are today, right? So look at Amazon, for example. He started in his garage, right? There are pictures of that with a spray painted banner was saying Amazon, right? Who knew back then that it's going to be one of the biggest companies in the world?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
treat your career as a business. Give yourself time to prosper and become better. Don't be too hard on yourself, and realize that to reach your goals and results, you need to be able to put in the work, right? Hard work. There's no thing as a shortcut. So yeah, I think we're almost out of time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, Robin, I mean, this is the thing now, isn't it? I guess for those watching now, it's really around, I guess, the key takeaways here is that it isn't easy. The work needs to go in. There are so many different ways that you can go. You can go about achieving the goals. You just have to kind of reflect on yourself. What keeps you happy as an individual? What keeps you most interested? Maybe it's what your business is expecting of you. Use that in a positive fashion to start to mold and shape your career. But this has been a fantastic chat, Robin. Honestly, it has. It's one of those insightful chats where it's not just about tech. It's about the whole package. It's about your soft skills. It's about your motivations as an individual. And it's just being able to recognise those things and then put the work into action effectively. Start working hard at learning these things, and slowly but surely you will get there. I guess it's the point. But there's always one last question I like to ask all guests as they come on the show, Robin. And we've kind of talked around the houses in quite a lot of detail now about personal development, careers, and keeping up to date with skills and things like that. But why are we doing this? I mean, I guess the question would be, where do you see the industry going over the next 5 to 10 years?
Good question. I think if you look at the AI related tools out there at this point, right? GitHub Copilot, what was it, Tab 9? There are a couple of these tools that help you write software, right? So writing software to a certain degree becomes easier. I'm messing around with copy.ai for my copywriting, my blog post, whatever. I haven't really touched it yet, but it's like, okay, let's look at it, right? So that's there. There are AI tools that help you, create graphics. There are AI tools for everything at this point, and these are becoming more and more mature, right? These models are they keep on training them, keep on feeding these models with information, so they become much, better at doing their job, and well, not completely thinking for you, but they're going to be automating a lot of stuff, right? I heard terms as ML ops, machine learning ops, where AI helps you operating your landscape, right? Your systems and everything. So where am I going with this? I think that a lot of things will become easier using AI, right? So I think for us as quote unquote humans, it becomes vital that we keep on improving ourselves, right? Highlight the human aspect, right? So yeah, I think it's crucial to focus on our communication skills, our feedback skills, giving feedback, receiving feedback. How do you properly construct feedback, right? Respect, mutual respect, trying to really find our, reconnect again. Social media and the whole COVID thing and everything, everybody's remote. And sometimes it makes it really difficult to really connect, to really listen to each other, to be in that moment, right? So I think that becomes more and more important. I'm guilty on not doing that as well. So I do need to follow my own advice and spend more.
It's a valid point though, Robin. I think so much has gone on over the last few years we've been working more and more apart from each other that it's a very valid point. I like that one because I think we all are now. We're starting to get back to a little bit of that normality, and we're starting to get back to meetings face to face. But wow, there's a world of difference to what it was before. Is my own experience on that. So I think it's a valid point.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything becomes much more AI driven. It becomes easier to do certain things. So we need to highlight our human skills, our quote unquote soft skills, and work on them deliberately, and making sure that we find ways to keep excelling ourselves into whatever we need to do. So
yeah, no, I like it, Robin. And let's hope that the machines don't overrun us with that AI, of course, which you see some of the news articles out there at the minute. And AI, I completely agree. AI, the advances over the last it's seemingly only the last few years, even with robotics and AI and things like that. Borderline scary. So it's going to be interesting to see how that transpires over the next few years, isn't it?
I sometimes get these Star Wars Clone Wars feeling, right? That I saw all these different of all these same. What was it? Boston Dynamics. They have
that's right.
Dog, right?
The dog, yeah.
And they had like a whole field of them moving synchronously. You're like, oh boy, right? And then later I saw a video of one of them with a rifle mounted on its back, and we're able to just really move around and shoot targets and stuff. You're like, okay, I know, right? Probably there's a lot of that military tech already there developed. We don't even know about it, right? I'm not trying to start any conspiracy theories here, but and then you see that and you're like, oh boy, and then it suddenly comes really close, and it scares me as well.
This conversation could turn very dark very quickly. Let's keep it positive. No, it's you're right though, and that's the whole point as well with AI. There's the whole morality and the morals and the way that we develop AI solutions. Back to your point, bringing the human aspect, we need to realize that a lot of human aspects, there are negative human aspects as well, and we absolutely want to try and make sure that those kind of things don't get into these AI solutions. And it's on us all, I guess, as individuals to make sure that we can, I'm trying to remember the terminology that we use. Responsible AI, I think, is the terminology that gets put out there, is that if we're developing these AI solutions as technical people in the industry, there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that, and how is that AI solution going to be used? Because that kind of hints back to that scary part, because all of a sudden AI can take on a world of its own. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago, I think there was a news article about an employee at Google saying that one of their AI had gone sentient and is self-aware, and you think, Really? Okay. So
Yeah, because that's
might. Yeah.
that's what differentiates us from most of the animals and beings in this world, is that we're self-aware, right? We can look at things from a different perspective, and we included that in our communication and all that stuff, and that's probably why we are what we are today, right? But yeah, on the other hand, AI can do a lot of good, right? And humans can do a
Yeah.
lot of bad. So it's it's not that the AI is scary. I think we should still be much more scared about people with bad intentions than a machine. So
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I wanted to say something, but I forgot. But I wanted to say, oh yeah, you said something, and it immediately triggers something that I said this morning as well. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Right? So
yeah.
I think we should be aware of all the power that we have as a technology industry, right? So yeah.
Use it for good. I think it's probably the way that you need to frame it, and you use that knowledge and power as. You're right. In the tech industry, not wanting to pull this conversation out even further, but I think there's a certain awareness of, as individuals, we know the kind of things that we work with and how we can work with tech, that unless you're in the industry, unless you're focus on learning some of these things, can be completely abstracted away from the non-tech person not working in this industry, and it's back to that point that you just said. With that kind of power and knowledge, it comes a great responsibility, and from my part, I think it's that awareness, helping others understand, helping others skill up, bringing people with you. That would be the kind of parting comments that I've got out of what you're looking at doing at the moment, Robin. That's what the message that's coming from you, is that you are in that space. You're looking to help others learn with LinkedIn learning courses. Now, that's something as individuals we can all do. We can all buy into that and work at that. And they're the overwhelming messages I've got out of this anyway, Robin. So thank you. It's been a great chat.
It's been my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me, and thanks for this conversation.
No, anytime, Robin, and good luck with the CKA. And we will catch up very soon, no doubt.
Yeah, let's get something in the box for streaming clouds, right? So then you can be our guest. So
more than happy to do that.
Yeah, let's see what we can come up with. But we'll take this offline, and I'll make sure that we get you on our live stream as well.
Oh, anytime. No, it's been awesome. Thanks for being an awesome guest, Robin. And yeah, we'll catch up offline.
Thank you, sir.
See you very soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye for now. Bye.